and welcome to an outrageous new episode of the StudioMEcast. Today is a very special episode, not just because of our wonderful guest, but also because this episode is being produced remotely by our co-founder, Keith. So if you're seeing it, it must have gone pretty well, so that's wonderful news. Today in the studio, I have a special guest. Of course, he is one of the admin on a bunch of the bigger Facebook filmmaking groups here in Pittsburgh. He is a writer, director, producer. It's Scott Danzig. Scott, thank you for joining me today.
You're welcome. This will be fun.
So we've got a couple of things that we can go over. You've made a bunch of short films, but you're also a bit of an organizer yourself. When you were in NYC, you started a Filmmakers Meetup that grew to 50 plus people. Is that right?
Yeah, I would say it started at that, and then kind of as people realized if it was for them or not, they might have drifted away, but it was about always about 30 to 50 people of all levels of experience. I just put out an invite. I think it was meetup.com or something. That was like a filmmakers collective. That was back in 2010, and I did enough reading and experimenting at home and did like just my first attempt at a short film. And got it done, and I was like, well, this will be my film school to work with other people at all levels and just make movies together. It was it was a very thorough test in organizing and people skills.
I bet. So what was your main inspiration for starting that group?
It's kind of like a why not thing. Like to organize and connect with people, something like that, you could just do it from your computer. And I made a point to like get to know people a little and see if like what they were like, what they're interested in doing. And I feel that makes people a lot more engaged and interested in the project. But I just kind of think it's there's potential for so much just by thinking up something to do and then trying to make it happen. And there were a lot of kindred spirits in that regard that showed up to some random meetup place in New York City one day, and I told them we can make movies, and everyone took a shot at it, and we were making movies.
Well, that's fantastic. I love that drive to build community. We have a wonderful independent filmmaking community here in Pittsburgh, and I've known you for a while, like just, we've been to some of the same events and all that, but we connected more recently. I think when you got started, I like to ask people, when did you first get the bite from the bug of filmmaking? When did you start, what was your inspiration for, did you just start with a short film that you wanted to make, or how did you get into this?
The first, I always kind of thought writing a screenplay was kind of funny and fun, rather, and it started to put pieces together in my mind about possibilities, especially when I was maybe staying up too late, and you start to grew up scared of the dark, and that leads to a lot of strong visuals that you think could translate onto screen, and I don't think that to do a lot of that, it's so unachievable. I mean, growing up with Alfred Hitchcock on the TV all the time. So I had that in mind, and eventually I saw The Ring, and I was like, this is the first one that is what I was thinking of as a kid. But in addition to that, I was pulled along to these Japanese animation conventions, Otakon in Baltimore, and they had this anime music video contest that seemed fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew my way around video editing. This is back in the day where you couldn't just a lot of people were still using VHS back then. So the contest was to take anime from these VHS tapes, put it to songs you like, and show it to the crowd. Probably some, I'm not sure about. I think the anime companies think of it as like fan stuff, and they're fine with it. Good promotion, but I did one of this gory anime called X, and Rammstein's Du hast, and made a video that got shown to, I think it was like 5,000 people in this big convention center, and they saw like my title and fire the word hate, and they were like, yeah, and they watched it and they loved it, and I was like, well, that was easy. You don't really get that experience, certainly not as a filmmaker, but it made me see what's possible with like an audience looking at your work, and that big screen feeling. So I've been chasing that since.
Yeah, so an AMV at a convention. That's wonderful. So it sounds like you started then as an editor. Is that accurate? Or
editor/writer, I guess.
Right.
Like I've always been a bit of a story crafter also, but I didn't think seriously about movies until after that, and then I was, the Ring might have had something to do with it, but when I moved to New York City, I was like, well, this seems to be the place to actually try and make it happen. They have filmmaking all over, and websites you could just find people.
When you make your films now, do you still write and edit them?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What kind of stuff do you write? Do you play in a particular genre?
Not really. They're all dark. I mean, I try and branch out and view and connect with writers that have work that I get excited about. I've really tried. It's few and far between, and there's no offense to anyone on that. It's just I'm trying to like soul search and see what drives me, and I find a personal connection goes a long way. So even if it's like it could be a story that's like a plot that's been told a bunch of different ways by a bunch of different people, but if I put my own my own imagination into it, I get excited enough where I want to turn it into a movie. I come up with like unique twists, and it's like, oh, this would be fun, and I start playing with it. I find that with writers that kind of pass it over the fence, there's not that continual creative process for the writing aspect that happens. I might think about a script for like a year or two before I finally put it into a film, and I don't think that it's rare to find something from a writer that he's chipped away at that script and fine-tuned and improved it for that long. You only get that if you do it yourself, usually, especially with shorts.
All right. So would you say that the scripts you write, do they reflect the kinds of films you like to see?
Yeah. I mean, they're always kind of different in terms of I'm trying not to like say, oh, my films are different and other people's aren't. They're different in ways where I might want to go in directions that I don't think other people might go. Ends up with like twists and concepts that I haven't seen before and probably won't. And I think that usually I have a dark comedy or pessimistic approach to human nature and the state of the world, and that always seems to come across in my filmmaking, for better or for worse.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, it's usually the creativity, the constant drive to come up with something I haven't seen before that at least grabs me is what I get excited about.
Mm. So, do you have a favorite movie?
Yeah, I have some movies that I usually list.
Mm-hmm.
Like Memento was a memorable experience.
Mm-hmm.
Pan's Labyrinth I loved.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, Dark City, just loved the feel of that movie. And then there are other. At the same time, I like Happy Gilmore a lot. That goes to my goofy comedy side. The Price is Wrong, bitch.
So what? You listed some good things there, but I want to zero in a little bit on Pan's Labyrinth.
Mm-hmm.
Then, what do you? What stands out to you about that film? Like, what's something about that speaks to you?
The intimacy of it and the just the sheer creativity and world building, like you just the fantasy aspects of that escapism in that movie. It was not only like very easy to relate to and very powerful real world situations with the whole World War II backdrop, but the way he crafted the fantasy world, Del Toro, it was the aesthetic really worked for me, and the mood. I thought I thought I really thought that was something special that I don't see too much.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's done certainly a lot of other things like Hellboy, and I think he was what was it? Yeah, The Shape of Water I think came close, but not quite. But I think Del Toro, when he works on like the smaller budget art house stuff, he's awesome.
Mm.
I like. It's very easy to get attached to the characters in that movie too, which
Mm-hmm.
isn't lost on me.
So it sounds like a lot of the things that you're listing there sound like they're inspirations to you. Are there, is there anything that inspires you as a filmmaker outside of filmmaking?
Yeah. In fact, the thing that I realized, I think filmmaking is kind of like at least for me, is a big soul searching exercise. Like what's important in filmmaking, what's important to me to like want to make another movie, because it takes a lot to make these movies. And what do people care about? How much do I care about people that watch my movies? And like every new production is exploring a new facet of the I guess myself and what drives me.
Well, let me jump in here for a second and ask you one of those questions, which is, what is important in filmmaking?
Well, that's what I was gonna wrap up to.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I think a lot of people in filmmaking love filmmaking, and I think that does. That is kind of missing a big part of filmmaking, and that is to tell stories, which include a whole lot more than filmmaking. So I find I've been making a point to focus more on my history, me as a person, like my culture. I've even like explored Judaism. It was never really a part of my life, but that's the culture I come from. So connecting, like I brought Judaism into one of my films, and I work as a software engineer. That's my day job. My last film, I utterly embraced the whole software engineering that's directly inspired from late deadlines crazy deadlines at work and working late hours with an unreasonable boss. And that with it was around Halloween that kind of meshed to make my last film. I think it's very important that filmmakers are focusing on all the other aspects of life, things unique to them, or learning about other things and bringing that into the filmmaking, because the audience only cares about filmmaking that much. They might not care at all. So it's a storytelling medium that can't just be about the medium.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I want to delve into one of the examples you just gave then. So you talked about exploring your cultural background in Judaism, and that being part of the film. Tell me about the process for that. Was that you learned a lot and then you made a film about it, or was it exploratory while you were working on it? How did it go? And how did it turn out for you? What
It wasn't necessarily about Judaism. It was more like a choice of the culture that the characters come from. But it's something I knew, and I thought that it would add a lot to the film to expose some aspects of the culture and embrace it. Like I had this rabbi from Beth Shalom congregation that I was looking for a cemetery to film in, and they threw in the rabbi, and he was singing on set, and so I was just the opportunity to show like this beautiful singing from a cantor that I've experienced growing up, but other people haven't. Like you don't get exposed to that if you're not Jewish normally. So there's a lot that my culture can add to a film, and I decided not necessarily to focus on it, but to embrace it and use that. I think that if you come from a culture, it can be a powerful addition to your filmmaking, rather than trying to use another culture. You can even fall into the danger of appropriation pretty easily doing that. But there's no reason not to ignore what's part of you. So that was just like every film I do. That was a new exploration of my filmmaking and myself.
It sounds like you ask yourself a lot of questions and explore them a bit through filmmaking, as many artists do with their mediums. Have you found any answers to your questions, or what's that journey like?
Yeah, as far as as far as like answers about what drives me, I've learned to embrace my humor more. I've learned that I'm as far as like the filmmaking aspect, I've learned to not focus on the technical so much, even though as a software engineer, that comes easily to me. But it's very important to focus on the story you're going to tell, which I can, which is the most important thing. I've come to find. I mean, 5 years from now, I might not think this, but right now, I think that the story is definitely the most important thing by far in filmmaking. Like I've focused on the various technical aspects and the acting and like plot structure and like suspense, but having like something that like an overall story that's interesting, that tells something that the audience will be interested in, I think is what drives me. And I mean, like, part of it is trying to answer questions about myself, and but also part of it is what drives me to make the next movie. I'm answering both questions.
Mm-hmm. Now, let's talk about production. All right. When you're directing and producing, do you have a favorite or best kind of moment or like part of the process when you're like is your favorite part the writing, or is it working with the actors or seeing it when it's done? Do you have a favorite part of the filmmaking process?
I like those moments when you realize the Eureka moments, and it could come from you, from me rather, or it could come from someone else. The most recent I could remember, there was like a climactic speech in the film that I'm working on now, where the DP was adjusting the lights, and I saw what it looks like when the lights dimmed down, and I was like, wait a minute, the shape of the light is, I think would be so nice to have as she's giving this dramatic speech, like assuring herself like she's going to do this, like she's stealing her nerves. So worked it into the film where the lights would subtly dim down as she's like preparing herself for this speech. And that, like, we did a safety take without that, of course, but it worked. And you don't have the opportunity for like those sorts of discoveries when creating art outside of filmmaking. That I mean, you do, but it's unique with all the various stages, whether it be like writing, coming up with the perfect ending, or an actor like does a choice that really works. When you have that whole vision in your head and you're making it, and you have that realization, like that's it. that is, I guess, my favorite moments.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah, it's when you see that it's working. Yeah.
Or think of new things as during the collaboration.
Yeah. That's still like, there's a lot of planning that can go into filmmaking, but being able to recognize those eureka moments is very important.
I think
for filmmakers.
planning is exceptionally important, because I think a lot of those moments would be missed if you don't plan the crap out of your film, because then you're just trying to make it happen rather than focusing on the art.
When you're casting one of your films, do you write the part first, or do you sometimes know somebody, an actor that maybe you want to work with? And I'm asking, have you ever written a part for a specific actor?
Yeah, a lot of times I'll have someone in mind. My latest film, I had someone in mind for sure. The film that I mentioned that brought in Judaism, medical divorce, the lead actors, I was thinking that they were perfect for this next film about software engineering, but and I wrote the script with him in mind, and he was like, "Nah." The lead actress wanted to do it, but he didn't, and so I did the whole casting process, and then he changed his mind and threw his hat in the ring, so I ended up bringing him in anyway. But sometimes it happens where I'll have someone in mind, but I would say maybe half the time it ends up being someone else anyway.
Does you've mentioned software engineering a few times. Does software engineering have anything in common with filmmaking?
Yeah.
Like what?
Especially being a director, I would say it changed my career. Over the past 10 years, I've come into my own as a film director for sure. A lot of confidence, a lot of being able to handle problems on the fly, a lot of planning, and being like the go-to guy to answer questions and all that. In software engineering, running a software engineering team is very similar in that regard. And I've been like a software engineer for, I guess it's been like 30 years now, starting with an internship. But now I'm very much a lead, and I find that it feels the same. And the confidence to know that I'm the best choice to lead, rather than seeing like the mistakes and like the lack of like good prioritization and constant strategic problem solving that you do all the time in filmmaking. It makes me feel like I need to be the one leading this team. I'm the best choice for it. That is definitely something that came from filmmaking.
That's really cool. I'm glad that you've clearly thought about these comparisons a lot. Yeah. I can tell. Yeah, you're very thoughtful in the way that you articulate things. Even when earlier you said something like, you said not necessarily to focus on the culture of Judaism, but to embrace it. It's a very interesting qualifier there. Now, when you're writing, tell me a bit about your writing process. Are you writing by hand? Are you typing stuff up? Are you thinking about it? And then when you've got it all figured out, do you draft a lot? What's like the brass tacks of getting this script made, looking from the outside? What does it look like when you're working?
I like to have my little notepad, and so used to do the coffee house a lot, maybe not. Maybe I drifted from that with the pandemic, but I still like the pencil and paper for the initial brainstorming. And then it ends up going in like a Google Doc as I form an outline and just high-level moments, so they're easy to move around. And then it goes into writer duet as a first draft. I might tweak it for a while, but then I'll send it around to various filmmaking friends I've collaborated with that don't mind or look forward to reading a short film because they know what sort of stuff I come up with in the end, and like to be a part of the process. And they'll give very honest feedback. I can trust them for that. And then I make sure I don't do too much of that. I find that with like feedback is very useful, but I've found that if you try and if you try and like appease all or accommodate all suggestions or something, I mean, there are some very thoughtful people, opinionated people. It can be impossible to make a script that addresses all of it. So at some point you have to trust yourself, and if it turns out to be like not the best script in the end, there'll be another one. And so yeah, I might be working like in that feedback process for a few months, and then I'll wait till the right pieces fall in place in terms of like my time and the location as I like tweak it more and come up with new ideas. And eventually I'll be like, okay, now's the time I feel is good to go into pre-production on this one. And the actors probably will have their own thoughts. So yeah, my scripts change until shoot day for sure.
Do you write a lot of scripts? I don't mean drafts, but like just different ideas that don't get made, or do you pretty much stick with like I'm writing this one and
I have a bunch of really big Google Doc with brainstorming ideas that at points I've gotten very excited by, and I'm still trying to make them work. I definitely have like 3 or 4 somewhat stories, but they're certainly not solid enough where I'm ready to write a script with. But I always like to have something waiting in the wings as I'm in post on my last film. I find it's important to always to not be starting from scratch once you do a film, because it's sadder that way.
With a lot of film projects, they'll have a distinct goal in mind, whether it's for something as clear-cut as the 48-hour film project or some other type of filmmaking competition. Sometimes there's seasonal motivations for like, oh, there's this local film festival I want to play for, or something like that. But with your films, do you find that like while you're making them that you have an end goal in mind of where this is going to be seen, or are you...
It's probably hurt me, but definitely not. I mean, like, I know that certainly if you're applying for a grant, it should be for that grant, like with that in mind. So it's very easy to be slightly off the mark with that sort of thing. Film festivals, it's a little wider scope, but it's very easy to, well, with if I was gunning for a particular film festival, I'd watch a bunch of films that have succeeded in that film festival and tailor the film to their preferences. And I generally don't do that. It's normally something that I want to explore, that I then look to see where it fits afterwards. And usually it's a harder sell because not only like maybe it doesn't like fit the particular categories that a film festival has, or this latest film that I'm working on, it might be like 17 minutes instead of the 15 or less that you want for a short. But it's generally it's generally more about exploring something that I've wanted to explore, and probably gets shown in less places because of that. And also it might be a little more experimental. I try and make sure whatever I do it well, but it's usually trying something new. And if it's like something that I've done before, I might have more an advantage to pulling it off better. Like lately I've been going pretty heavy with makeup, and I know how to better approach special effects makeup and not special effects makeup to get closer to what I want in the vision. I learned certain things not to assume, certain things about like time accommodation and challenges that the makeup department has to overcome.
How many makeup artists are you working with on the project that you're referencing?
Well, it's never been more than like well, I guess I did one with like a full life cast that was like 2 makeup artists.
Wow.
And I think she was working on that for like a month before, but since then it's been maybe like face and arms, that sort of thing. And the latest was kind of comical, even clown-like makeup, and there's only trying to find something that's achievable, like 3 different looks within a day, is a learning experience. So if I did that again, I would pull it off better, but my next film is probably not going to be the same because I'm trying to explore something new. So that might have approach might be holding me back in terms of like really nailing everything. But I have to be true to what I actually want out of filmmaking.
So you're experimenting more with, I don't know how to say experimenting is the right word, but you've been implementing more factors into your filmmaking, like the makeup. Have you ever, so there's a lot of practical special effects there. Have you ever worked with visual effects?
Yeah. That one with the full life cast had a lot of visual effects too, and that was also a learning experience to like not assume that certain things were easy to communicate and easy to. There was also a fair bit more involved with the different angles I was going for. To make the visual effects match up in the different angles. But I don't know if I'll do another film like that ever again. Ever again is probably too comprehensive, but for a while anyway. I think that it was certainly like a learning experience. I have like some technical knowledge, but probably not comprehensive enough to really estimate it well. Plus, you're always working with someone else, and the communication is conveying your vision and what's actually important to you, I find is probably the biggest challenge of being a director.
So are there any things this year, any different tool sets, factors in filmmaking that you haven't done yet that you're looking at maybe implementing for the first time in your work this year or on a future project?
Very much so. I'm planning on trying something much more experimental for my next one, which is kind of a meta concept, focusing more on like it might be exposing some more of the filmmaking process and something that I've certainly never seen before. And not, I mean, I do want to focus on the story too, but it's certainly only half of the film. It's definitely a very experimental piece, and I wouldn't say it's a tool set or something, but it's definitely something completely new that I have to see if I could pull off well. I guess I'm not sure how to describe it, but there's always new concepts I'd like to try, and maybe bending rules of filmmaking. Other times it more fits the mold of conventional filmmaking, and there's like something within filmmaking that I'd like to explore, like with Senior Software Engineer. My current film in the works is more embracing comedy and the software engineering world, but other times it goes completely away from that, like what I'm thinking of for the next one. Then there's also another one that's kind of related to software engineering that I'm thinking maybe would be good as a musical.
Oh, that could be fun.
Yeah.
So for your film that you're currently in production for, or post-production? Post-production
Yeah.
for Senior Software Engineer.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a tentative release date for this project?
I'm doing a lot of compositing, surely, but admittedly slowly, although I've made good headway. You have to come up with a lot of fake computer screens, and that involves like some real coding to make these websites behave as you would want, as she's like clicking on these buttons, and then recording what happens in like QuickTime and compositing that into the computer screen. And I did that for my last film, A Ranger's Way, where it was the protagonist, someone suffering from PTSD, a soldier, who's trying to write a suicide note and is interrupted with video chat requests from the dead people.
Oh, that sounds fun.
that involves like a whole like fake video chat client with notifications and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
So it was a fair bit of compositing, and this Senior Software Engineer thing is now next level with that, with like 19 times I show the screen doing something. So I'm at least halfway there.
Well, that's good. Yeah, it's quite a slog there for getting the visual effects in, but that's good. Now, I want to go from doing some visual effects, the new things you want to do and all that. So you're in post on the Senior Software Engineer. Of all those ideas that you have in that expansive Google Doc that you mentioned and the notepads and everything else, have you thought about making a feature?
Yeah. My latest thing, I mean, like, you go to my website, which is sneakyghost.com.
Everybody, you can see that in the description below. So it's The Modern Age. Go ahead and follow up with that link down there. So
Thank you. But there's 13 films right there. I guess Senior Software Engineer and Ranger's Way aren't posted yet, but all the others are there, like embedded YouTube videos. And then there's some that didn't make it in just because they might be, I don't put 48-hour films there generally, or maybe it was something that I was helping with someone else's project. But even with those 13, you tally up the things and you get way more than a feature-length film in terms of like size. So I'm thinking like the biggest challenge I found with a feature is like, okay, I have a day job. And I think the typical way you approach doing a feature, if you have a day job, is you try and do it over weekends for like 4 or 5 months, or you just take off for 2 weeks or something and just bite the bullet and do it that way. Very constrained. And certainly anything I come up with would be like lower budget, but still significant. And I was really gunning for a feature at one point back in, was it like 2020, 2021 during the pandemic. I was thinking now's the time to like go through scripts from writers and find one I'm excited about. And maybe by the end of the pandemic, I'll be ready to shoot a feature. To be honest, like I got excited about a couple of them and tried to negotiate on 1 or 2. It didn't work out. And then I ended up buying a house.
Congratulations! That's great news.
It's great news, but not for my ability to self-fund.
Well,
but
is that.
So I was thinking, like, I still, as a software engineer, I have an income. I can afford like 2 significant short film productions per year. If I tried to, I'm throwing around the idea of trying to design a feature that could be that could combine efforts that would be like standalone short films. Maybe something could fit into, like, the pieces could fit together to end up as a feature by the time I've done this for like maybe 5 separate what would be like short films. If strategizing there, seeing if I come up with a concept, it definitely wouldn't be like stereotypical Save the Cat type script. It would be something different, but everything I do is something different. So
I've done something like that before a couple of times. When I was in art school, I was taking some animation courses, and one of the things that we did in that course is we went over character design, and so we made our character at the beginning of the semester, and then we were going to use that character, like each student created their own character, and we each used our character for all of the animation projects that we were doing over the course of the semester. So it's like, oh, you have to have your character carry something heavy or throw something or walk around or whatever, and do an expression change. And what I did from the outset was I mean, it wasn't like, it wasn't Shakespeare or anything, but I saw what, the syllabus, everything we were going to do, and I added little things into those animations so that at the end of the semester, when I did my final, which you could do whatever you wanted for your final, you just had to implement stuff. Yeah, I did some things specifically for the final that, like, and that was probably, I don't know if it was, that's where most of the work was. Like, I didn't cheat, right? Like, I made a lot of new stuff for the final, but I also took those old projects and I added a couple things to some of them and then connected all of them. And I had, for my final, I was able to show kind of a a short animated film, as a result of it. So it's doable.
It can work, especially if you. I believe if you can plan it, like you address the potential problems.
Are you thinking of these shorts that to combine into a feature as being standalone shorts as well?
I don't. Possibly. It could be like just moments that fit together. I'm not saying that it's definitely able to be done well, but I would guess probably there are some like concepts that fit. And if I could sit down with my pencil and notebook and come up with a concept that I was like, I might be thinking, that would work for this, then there's no reason I couldn't do it. I mean, like, just when I made my first film, I thought about all the things required. Like, I self-taught, so it seemed like this big ominous wall to make a film. But we were past everything was digital by the time I moved to New York. And I had my handy cam. I knew how to record separate sound, just ordering Zoom H4. I read enough about like screenplay format and knew enough about the process to just make it happen. Once you think about the steps end to end, like here's the people, here's what you can do, here's the end product, how do you get there? And you could think it through in your head. There's no reason you can't do it. It's all planning. So if I think of a way I can make a feature happen with these piecemeal film efforts in a way where I don't have to like worry about actors getting older, for instance, like it would still work for the story. To put up enough safeguards in case things don't work. It's all planning, but once you have it end to end thought out, there's no reason you can't do it. So, or I might just find the right script and feature script and go for that instead. We'll see.
Well, we'll see what comes, but thank you very much, Scott Danzig, for being my guest today. We have your website for the link in the description below, but is there anything else that people can, do you have any social media or anything that people follow you on or anything?
There's a Facebook account page linked to from that sneakyghost.com. That would probably be the easiest way to find updates, and I'm also pretty active. Certainly, I admin the Pittsburgh Filmmakers Community Group.
That's right. Yeah.
And I'm definitely on people's set pretty often, just trying to help others out and learn together. So it's not hard to find me.
All right. Well, thank you very much again for being my guest here in the StudioMEcast. And
thank you.
Absolutely. And everybody, thank you so much for joining us. If you like the look and sound of this space and just can't wait to see yourself in it, well, you can go to StudioME.me and check out our website and book your own podcast here today. And if this video and audio hasn't convinced you itself, then you can come on down for a free tour and we can just show you how awesome it is here. So make sure to check us out. If you're the kind of person who subscribes, it'd be really cool if you did that, because we're going to be here next time waiting for you, and hope you enjoy the show. See you then. Bye-bye. Hey, I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you want to start your own podcast, why wait? Reach out to us at StudioME.me, and I hope you hear me again soon.